the States Assembly and trying to rescind the law, and I think that would be a difficult thing to do. So I think it gives people confidence that we value the service and that it's always going to be available.
And this is for children with health or development needs and for care leavers, is that right?
Yes, as well as the children in care, yes.
Yeah. Oh, and children in care.
And so potentially for some of them it would be available up to 25, yes.
So for care leavers, up to 25?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Okay, so Minister, could you inform the panel how the appointment process for independent advocates will be managed? What safeguards will be in place?
So we've gone through that process. There was a comprehensive commissioning process which resulted in the appointment of 2 service providers. One will offer services primarily to look after children and care leavers, whilst the others will focus on children with health and development need and those with safeguarding arrangements in place. And the advantage of that is that we have, if we had a single provider, and if for any reason they should cease to provide that service, we have a backup. And in fact, prior to it becoming a statutory service, we did at one point ask one of the other providers to cover some of the services of another one whilst they were, they didn't have the resources to carry out sufficient advocacy. So I think it's very important not to just choose one provider.
Yeah, so there's that
Yeah.
backup in place.
Yeah.
But do you know what safeguards that they have in place for their advocates, like whether there's any criminal records or, what training they have? Things
Well, they
like
would
that?
all have to have criminal record checks.
Yeah.
They'd all have to have
DBS.
I assume it would, in fact, would be like an advanced DBS.
It's a category 2.
Are you able to help?
Yeah, so that will be obviously down to the advocacy providers and their safer recruitment processes.
Yeah.
But part of the contracting that we'll have done with them, obviously, we will require them to use safe recruitment process. So you would require things like for them to have satisfied themselves that DBSs have taken place. And if the same as probably across government, if you were to have someone where there was some kind of positive DBS, you'd expect there to be a proper risk assessment around what that might mean. Sometimes people can have spent convictions from a long time ago or things like that. So you'd expect the provider, that would be the same for any of our providers that we've got contracts with, to follow good, safe recruitment and due process around it.
Okay, so that's set in guidance?
It's
or
in
contracts?
our, so I've been involved in the advocacy contracting, so that will be built into our contract rules and terms and conditions that are in there, that are set into there.
Okay, great.
I think we've strengthened the contracting this year quite a lot over this.
Minister, could you explain how the advocacy services will be promoted to qualifying individuals?
Yes, so we would make all children, we pass the information to the providers for every child, and then they are able to contact them. We also make all those in care aware of the existence of the service. So I think as things currently stand, every young person in care has been made aware of the service.
And what about those children with health and development needs? Will they or their families know?
Absolutely, yes.
How will they know?
So through the inclusion project
Yes.
of the Jersey Youth Service, those youth workers are trained to direct people to those type of services when there's an identified need.
Okay.
I think the other part of that, if I may, Minister, is so we know from our government services that those referrals, for want of a better description, are made, and we've got some really good high figures to show that when a child's coming into care, there is an opportunity that referral is made to the relevant advocacy service. What's also, as part of that contracting, the advocacy service will also be required to tell us their activity, so the number of children who they are advocating for, if you like. And between the two, you'll get an understanding of the uptake.
Okay.
And I think just the other thing to add, and just share that, it's not just a one-off process. So that child coming into care it might be all too much at the first instance. I don't want another person in my life, thank you very much. But they will continually be offered, and then there's an opportunity for them to take it up at any time. I just want to underline that, really.
And
I
just
think
to
when
add,
we checked it, when we did check at end of Qtly, every child in care had been referred to the service.
Yeah. And I think if I can add, if you're happy for me to add as well, just in terms of, because I think you're talking about the broader children in need
Yeah.
group.
Yes, where we...
So those children that are a child in need and they've got or child protection plan, there's a process that happens, that their families are advised of that at the front end of that intervention, and that the advocacy providers required they get the referral, they know that young person's open to a service, and then they would obviously try to make contact. Obviously it's led by families, by children, about whether they want it. But,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay. And thank you for that. Minister, could you outline how the code of practice will be developed and what role it will play in guiding the duties and conduct of advocates?
Okay, so that's an important part of this service. So the code of practice obviously gives guidance on the role and function of the advocacy work. And publishing a code of practice is another requirement of the Children and Young People's Law, so we have to do it by law. So the code of practice has been co-created by a working group which included representatives from Jersey advocacy providers, Jersey Cares, Bernardo's and My Voice, and was also subject to legal review. The code sets out guidelines as well as for advocacy service providers as well as for the independent advocacy themselves. And it sets boundaries on advocacy practice, guidance on important issues such as conflict of interest and non-instructed advocacy. And non-instructive advocacy is where a child is unable to express their own wishes, feelings or preferences due to their age, disability, communication difficulties, or perhaps some other impairment. So that they have a voice even though they may not be able to express all their wishes themselves. It sets out the eligibility criteria for independent advocates, including the requirements for qualification and training, which we covered earlier. It sets out the advocacy providers' obligations to ensure that relevant training is available to all their staff, and appropriate safeguarding and data protection policies.
Okay, so that's good. Will there be any need to look at it again to see if any revisions are necessary later on or not?
I would have thought that we have to from time to time review it, although I don't actually have the timescale on review, but I would think it has to be reviewed from time to time.
Okay.
I mean, we've only just published it in September 2025.
Yeah.
I think that Minister's quite right. As our kind of advocacy services kind of gain in terms of and improve in terms of their consistency and quality, there may well be issues that come up that we need to include here. Yeah. As the Minister has alluded, we've done our best in terms of working with advocacy providers to make sure that the code of practice is grounded in the realities of providing that service. But I've no doubt that there will be a time and a place where it will need to be reviewed.
Well, I mean, I think you're right. As a statutory service, it's entirely new. I mean, we had it as a service before. I think we learnt a lot, particularly about referrals and how that process should work. So having it as a non-statutory service certainly helped us learn the way. But as a service bound in law, it is new, and I think possibly somewhere there should be somewhere it should state how often we would review that policy.
Okay, thank you. Now, I'm going to ask about continuity of advocacy support, how that will be maintained in cases where an advocate's appointment is terminated or contract ends. And I know you've already mentioned there's 2 services, so there's like a backup. But are there particular plans or guidance about how to manage when an advocate leaves?
So it is set out in the regulations the arrangements for when a period of advocacy ends. And that could be because, as you say, the service provider, for some reason, unable to continue. The key presumption is that the offer must always be open to all those eligible young people. And we obviously come back to having two providers. And it's also a presumption that when closing down an advocacy contract with a young person, we must provide a period for both parties to prepare for the contract end. The only time when that wouldn't happen is obviously, as we've said, if somebody suddenly said, we're going to cease offering this service. So the regulations provide that an advocacy arrangement is terminated either by the independent advocate themselves or by the service provider or the minister, that a replacement is appointed, and that either the minister or service provider must take all reasonable steps to inform the qualifying individual about the details of their replacement. So therefore we are bound in law to actually provide a replacement.
Okay, thank you for that. I think that's you now.
Okay, thank you. I've just got some questions about the UNCRC.
Right.
Because you passed the commencement date on 15th of October. So please, Minister, can you outline the progress made since the duty to have due regard for children's rights came into effect for ministers and States Assembly bodies in January 2024?
Right. So, I mean, some of the things that I've got here are obviously predate that. So we've had the prohibiting of physical punishment for children, creating a legal framework for the Children's Commissioner, introducing a new children's and young people's law, amending the civil status law, which is a current one, amending the legislation to further protect women and girls. That to some extent is ongoing, but some of that is in there. And regulations affirm the statutory rights to an independent advocate, which we've just covered.
Talked about, yeah.
So the impact is that our senior officers and leaders now have a clearer understanding of their responsibilities for safeguarding and as corporate parents, and there's better communication between the agencies that look after our most vulnerable children.
Okay.
So it's positive, and it's a continuing process of improvement.
Lovely, thank you. You talked about the partners who are delivering services for you. So can you tell us how public authority duty bearers such as charities and arm's length bodies and the parishes are being supported by your department to prepare for the extension of the law to them in January?
Right, so over the last 6 months, officers have engaged with representatives of all public authorities named in the law, and that includes the Comité des Connétables and the parish secretaries. I can certainly say that my parish secretaries have been supported and have been involved in discussions and training, and I assume that's been the same for the other arm's length organisations and charities. So the Children's Rights Scheme acts as statutory guidance published under the law and designed to support all duty bearers in exercising their due regard duty. So we'll be issuing slightly revised version of the guidance ahead of this phase 2 enactment, which is fairly imminent. And we also provide all public authority duty bearers with a template and guidance document to assist them with preparing children's rights impact assessments. And officers in the children's policy team are ready to provide support via dedicated email address. Now, I know there's something, because I know that our parish secretaries it's in here, but they've also got 2 online learning modules. So I'm aware of that anyway, because our parish.
Have they?
Yes, yeah. So they've been doing that. So that's available, and officers are working to investigate. They're rolling out these modules, but I know that our people are already aware of them, and I think may already have sort of looked at one of them. Mm-hmm. So that's in place as well.
It's good stuff. There's lots going on, basically.
There is a lot going on,
people,
yes, yeah.
That's good.
And I think we have prepared people properly for this.
Well. In terms of compliance with the duty to have due regard, how will your department monitor that across the different duty bearers? And what accountability mechanisms will be in place?
So, overall responsibility for exercising the duty of care rests with the duty bearer. But in the case of ministers and elected members, they can be challenged on the floor of the Assembly if they lodge a proposition relating to a matter that would affect children without, for instance, publishing a CRIA. Such a challenge could result in a reference back. I might have to get further information how we monitor the other, or there is monitoring for the other bodies.
So the policy intent was to give the responsibility for monitoring the career that happened in the Assembly to those duty bearers themselves. So there is no reference in the Convention Rights Law of a person or an individual or a department who is assigned a kind of QA, a quality assurance role. So it's very much among peers. And that's the position to date. The Children's Commissioner's Office is a friend to to the process and is supportive generally and can provide advice and guidance generally. But we've also provided and tried to train those people who support ministers and elected members so that they feel supported in bringing this forward. I think on reflection and thinking about the journey that we've been on in the first kind of 18 months, 2 years, there hasn't been a lot of challenge specifically around the career, where members have put different career forward. And that may be something to think about whether we can do more in that space.
I think we may see more now that there is a sort of reflection on how the law should be applied, because I think you may get something coming forward where it says there's no children's impact, but there is, and that will be challenged. I think it's more likely we'll get challenges now than we did in the past.
Before, okay. Have you got any examples of where the law has already influenced policy and outcomes?
Yeah. I've got a couple. I think one that's sort of been cited a few times is actually the one on the carbon neutral roadmap. So that certainly impacts children and young people and their future. That CRIA was part of the original process, but that CRIA has been updated now twice to reflect changes in the policy area. So the first iteration was published in 2021, and then there have been two further updates, and it shows that the CRIA is a live document and should be updated as we gather more information or as things develop to reflect any changes. So, that's a good one. The other one actually was a recent one with the Housing Minister's residential tenancy law. And I think that had a big impact on children. There was a very good example of the CRIA in that one. It sort of looked at assumptions relating to evictions, and how that had an impact on children and their future. So I think those are two good examples of how they're. Yep.
Okay, thank you very much.
Excellent. Minister, I'm going to ask a few questions now on the Children and Civil Status Consequential Amendments. Could you provide the panel with an update, please, of the status of the Children and Civil Status Amendment Law, including whether it has received royal assent and when it is expected to come into force?
Well, I'm pleased that it has gone through the process, and in fact, I've signed a ministerial order to bring the law into force on the 24th of November. And as you know, the law ensures that all children, regardless of how they were conceived, and their families will have the same rights as each other. And I think that's incredibly important. We have moved from a point where the law just considered there was one type of couple, a mixed sex couple, to the modern world where there are a number of different variations. We've got same-sex couples, we've got surrogacy, and these things were not recognised. The UK law had moved faster than us over the years, and it was, high time that we actually came up to date. And I'm very pleased that we've been able to do that.
So what practical and operational changes are being implemented across relevant departments and services to support the delivery of the new legal provision introduced by the law?
So let's look at for instance, the superintendent registrar, because come the 24th of November, I actually believe they've got a waiting list of people who are who want to take part of their service. So they are able to provide new certificates. There's a new registration process. They have trained staff and ready to implement the new procedures. They have updated their web page, and they're trained to manage the inquiries from parents, which are going to come in, fairly quickly after that implementation date. For the courts, there are new court rules. We have, I'm trying to think, parental orders, which for the first time will be recognised in our courts. There is also a process by which UK parental orders will now be recognised. And the court again has had to develop new forms and procedures and obviously undergo training for their staff. JAFCAS have developed a guidance to support the parental orders. And then we look at places like, you wouldn't immediately see, but obviously it's another form of conceiving, the assisted reproduction unit. They have new parental consent forms because only those births who are recognised reproduction unit will be able to register the births as, having both parents on there. If it's done in a less formal form, then there is no certainty as to who the parent might be. People are obviously advised to always use the assisted reproduction unit. Children's services, obviously we have new guidelines on parental responsibility, and staff have received a briefing. We've had government communications to raise awareness. And then there is also the surrogacy guidance, where we come back to parental orders, where, of course, for the first 6 weeks, the surrogate has parental responsibilities. And then once the parental order is in place, that all transfers to the new parents.
Thank you, Minister. My next question, strangely enough, was about surrogacy.
Oh, sorry.
I think you've answered that. But you used an acronym there, JACAS. Could you just, for the camera and for the public, could you tell us what that actually stands for, please?
JAFCAS.
Jersey Family Courts
Yes.
Advisory Service. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Yep.
I have some questions now which are about children in the care of the Minister and children who've been adopted as well. So, Minister, could you outline what post-adoption support is currently available for parents and guardians in Jersey, and how this support meets the long-term needs of adoptive families?
Okay, so post-adoption support is offered to every local adopter who has adopted children here in Jersey. And the support can range, there's a range of service from one-off telephone support to offer advice and reassurance, to more in-depth pieces of work which are allocated to an adoption social worker or the adoption family support worker. How we determine that support that's needed by adopters is Obviously, after the initial contact, we can assess, the level of support that's required. And there's 2 types of post-adoption support that are offered, and that includes direct work with adopters, offering our own expertise around issues such as trauma, therapeutic parenting approaches, attachment routines, how to utilise support networks, confirming aspects of family history, details from records, and providing counselling around this where needed. We do endeavour to deliver as much support as we can in-house. However, there are times we need to support families to make referrals to the Children and Families Hub. So this is where the second options are, and signposts to our other appropriate agencies such as CAMS, Social Security, and specialist services in counselling.
Okay, so how long is this support available for? Because, is it throughout the child's time growing up, or is it just for a short period? Or
as far as I know, adopters can look for support at any time during the adoption. Yes.
so if everything's fine and then the child as a teenager needs some extra support, that's still available?
They would still be able, yes, yeah.
Okay.
So it's similar to the support for fostering.
And would the adopted family know who to contact if they haven't asked for any support for a number of years? Or?
Well, I'd hope they'd come to Children's Services and, we would quickly ensure that they receive the appropriate support in the same way as they did when they made first contact with us.
Okay. Do you think there's sufficient support around early trauma that a child might have experienced?
Well, again, I can't believe that we wouldn't, that wouldn't be a key part of it, because many of our children have experienced trauma. And in fact, just the fact that they've come up for adoption is traumatic in itself. So I think that's a key part of any service that we offer. Is there anything you can add?
Yeah, we are just, it's not specific to adoption, but it'll go across the whole system. We're just in the process currently of looking at trying to procure trauma-informed training across the whole system. So that would be, we're trying to line it up with schools and all different parts of the child system, social care, through the judiciary as well as part of the Family Justice Council. So that probably we all across all of the agencies have a more uniformed approach to how to respond to trauma for children, and that training offer will be a widespread one, which will help. But certainly, if you've got where the adoption team is, it's only a tiny team, but that team have got access as part of the new model of the work. We'll have access to psychology input, and that psychology input will be able to advise those adopters and provide support around how to respond to trauma and children's attachment experiences and things like that.
Okay, thank you.
So that offer will get better, I think, as time goes on. It's probably not as developed yet as we want.
Is there something with CAMS where we offer
That's the CAMS
parenting?
Yeah, so
course
we're
for-
already offering quite a lot of courses that you could access through the Early Help Hub, CAMS, the Children in Care psychology offer will be for fostering and adoption as well. So we're just in the process of strengthening it, knowing it needs to offer more going forward. That work's well underway.
Okay.
Yeah, it should be much more strengthened as a result than what it's been historically.
Thank
And it's
you.
already probably offering more than what it was.
Okay. So now I just have a few questions about children who have been placed off island. Minister, could you inform the panel what specific support is offered to the families, say they might be the birth families, for example, of children who have been placed off island, and how their ongoing needs are monitored and addressed?
So for children who are placed in the UK for whatever reason, parents are supported to maintain contact with their children, which is particularly important, and that includes support with travel to the UK and support for overnight stays to make, and sometimes longer, for in order that they can make contact with their children. There's also support activities with the children, and it can also those visits can also include siblings where relevant and appropriate. And of course, we've also got, as we come back to it, the independent advocacy service for those children who are placed in care or fostered in off island.
Okay. And so those trips to the UK is that funded as well for
Yeah,
people?
that's funded, yes,
Yeah.
yeah, and it can be funded for the siblings as well. And I think we pay for, in effect, if they make a family trip to somewhere there.
Yeah, it's always driven by the care plan for the child. So whatever in practice, sort of operationally, is whatever the child's care plan is. Often there'll be court care plans, so that will say how much contact there'll be per year, and we would help to facilitate that, recognising there is distance. So yeah, we would fund flights and ability to get to where they need to, and potentially activities to make that happen.
Okay, so now another question about children placed in the UK. So could you explain how Jersey Children's Services work in partnership with UK Children's Services and agencies to support the children placed in the UK, particularly in relation to safeguarding, to their education and well-being?
Okay, so Jersey Children's Services engage with relevant local authorities when a child is placed in the UK, and that includes notifying the relevant authority if a child from Jersey is placed in the area, so that relevant authorities are aware that they have a vulnerable child in that area. I think there's additional engagement that may take place, and I think in every case we would have a contract with the if it.
So the sorry, because it's quite operational,
Because they have a
isn't it?
duty
So
of care. You know, the local authority has a duty of care.
So it, yeah.
I know that we haven't managed as yet to sort out the law that ensures that that's in place. But
So
they
there was
do
a
have
safeguarding worry. If
Yes.
the child had a safeguarding worry in an area, that local responsibility is with the local authority. But the part of when we set the placement arrangement up with whatever the provider is, maybe it's a children's home or foster care association or whatever it is, we would work with that provider to make sure that the child's education, their health needs, and that is all part of setting up that contract, to make sure that the right things are in place. Sometimes that can be challenging, the same as here, depending on the child's level of need. But that's the work that they would do as part of that contract arrangement, to make sure we get schools set up, that our health provider here makes sure they get the health assessments and they get the right access to health care. And all of those things are part of the placement agreement that the social worker goes out and does when the child's first placed as well.
What we've also done is we've got an arrangement with Medway now, who do some of the work or do the work on our behalf. So we've got a contract with Medway Council to undertake those UK placement searches for children who require specialist care that's not available on the island. And so they do some of that initial work for us in finding that specific care and ensuring that that is the right care for the child.
Okay.
So we have a direct contact with them now.
So that child will be, there's Medway involved, there's the local authority involved. And Jersey, who has the ultimate responsibility in relation to something like the education?
Stays here.
There's still the ultimate responsibility.
Still ours. So.
Could you, I mean, you've covered some of this, I think.
And our social workers visit
Well, regularly,
Yes,
yeah,
regularly.
yeah,
So
yeah.
we
And they're
know
advocates.
that the education is taking place.
Yeah.
If there's a challenge with education, the same as here, you would be working with trying to make that happen and looking at what the alternatives around it. Because some children need different arrangements. Some placements might involve education as part of it. It might be specialist residential school, or so it just depends. Every child's got a different care plan.
Okay, so my next question, I think you may have something else to add to this, but I wanted to ask about the formal protocols or agreements in place to ensure continuity of care for those children placed outside the island. Is there anything else to add
So
to
that
what
is
you've already said?
With us.
under the UK Children Act 1989 to be sort of to recognise our care orders that we have made. Unfortunately, we're still at a point where we were when we last met and spoke about this with the Department for Education in the UK. So we're constantly pushing to get this resolved, but the hold-up is there, and they have vast amounts of legislation. We haven't dropped the ball at this end, but we are very much dependent on them.
Okay. Okay, so I've got one more question, I think. Concerns have been raised with the panel from several families who foster and have adopted about the current availability of support for children with FASD. And so is there, and are there assessments going on now? I know there was something set up, but I believe the doctor may have not be here. I can't remember right now. Is that still available, the support for FASD and the
Fetal
assessments?
alcohol syndrome?
Yep.
Yeah.
There's certainly support.
Is this off island, are you talking
No,
about?
no,
No, this is
just-
locally.
yeah.
We've got
We do have CAMS.
Yeah, we've got the CAMS service
Yes,
that
CAMS
obviously are
Yeah.
developing their expertise around FASD and
Because I wasn't sure if that had come to a stop for some reason. This is what we were concerned about.
no
they're aware of it, no.
reason. We could look into if there's
Can you
an issue,
perhaps
but
follow up in writing
Yeah.
with us
Yeah.
then, if
Yeah,
that's okay?
'cause
Yeah.
actually
not
we
aware of
haven't been. If there is an issue, you're ahead of us because we
Okay,
we
so
actually haven't had that raised that I'm aware of.
No,
it's
I
about support and assessments. So perhaps if you can get back to us,
Yep.
that would be good. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. The next set of questions are about the play strategy.
There you go.
And if I can ask Malcolm, it is
I'm sure.
forte.
Minister, could you update, or Assistant Minister, could you update the panel on any progress made toward the development of a play strategy since its initial announcement?
Yes, so the play strategy is now in final form, almost. We plan to have it ready by the end of November.
Okay.
And publish it mid-December, so after all the budget stuff is done and dusted. And actually there's a nice synergy there with Christmas and children, so I think it would be a nice opportunity to get the play strategy out. So that's the plan for publication.
You need to grow a bigger beard.
And put some weight on.
We understand that there is no specific budget allocated for the creation and implementation of the play strategy. What challenges, if any, do you perceive has that created when developing the draft strategy?
Yeah, I think, the strategy is a vision. It is what we'd like to achieve. It is how we'd like young children, all children, to develop and play. But what we are doing in terms of making sure that the strategy is something that drives forward change is we'll be changing someone's job profile next year so that they will be able to give more time to develop the actions from the strategy. So the challenge always is around funding, because otherwise it is just, a wish list. But the strategy also incorporates really good things that are happening right now, not least the new youth centre in Ann Street, and not least some of the other play parks that have opened up recently and how well they're working for young people. So, all of these things are an iterative process. But my main focus is to make sure that we keep it alive by dedicating more of an officer time to it next year.
And clearly we've just published our online harms report.
Exactly.
One of the conclusions of which was the fact that if children didn't spend so much time online, they wouldn't have so much to worry about.
I'm glad you brought that up. So I must admit, I didn't have an opportunity to read all of your report, Chair. But if I look at recommendation 27, which exactly stipulates what you've just said, Conatab, and if I just briefly give you an excerpt from my foreword on the play strategy, it says barriers such as limited availability and accessibility to play spaces, safety concerns, and the increasing influence of digital engagement mean that children today may not experience the same freedoms to play as previous generations did. This play strategy addresses these concerns by squarely setting out tangible actions to ensure that real-life play is positioned as a positive and productive alternative to screen time, is accessible to all, and that our communities are built with play in mind. You know, that is the vision, and that very much chimes with recommendation 27. So it's good to see that we're aligned, not least on that.
I don't know how other developments are going, but certainly the one in St Peter's, the 130
Yeah,
houses,
yeah.
because we have a play strategy, a lot of work has gone into developing the play area, and they've obviously liaised with us, which wouldn't have happened otherwise. So although we haven't got a budget, we are actually making a difference, and I've got to thank Malcolm for that, and the one sort of member of staff that you've.
That's it.
Well, can I just say that recently Lord David Blunkett was in the island.
Yes.
So I asked him what would he do about the problem with online harms, and he said two things. He thought of immediately. One of them is a lot more play areas and places for young people to go.
There you go.
And the second one was for adults to not be on their phones all the time.
That's
be a good
right.
example.
Setting a bad example.
That's true in so many ways.
Yeah.
And indeed, just for the recording, is the fact that we on the planning committee have seen a lot more play areas come forward in planning stage, and we're very pleased and proud that that is now ongoing.
Good.
The other thing I'd just like to ask with regards to the play strategy is how you explain how children, families and relevant stakeholders are being engaged in shaping the content and priorities of the play strategy.
So one of the things that we did, we always wanted to include young people in this, of course, but we were always mindful that they had been asked a number of times in the past. And the message that we got from them quite strongly is, you've asked us enough times, please do get on with it. So what we did was, when we had the first draft of the strategy, we took it to the Schools Network Council, and we had a child-friendly version, which we called the Play Plan, which actually I think is a nicer title in some ways, a nice little alliterative ring to it. But what those children and young people told us was, yes, we hear what you're trying to achieve. Please get on and do something. They gave us some really good feedback on the child-friendly version in terms of disability and in terms of the characters that were involved, pictorially in the plan. Things that actually we really had missed. So that was really rewarding to get their feedback. We're also producing a short film on the play plan, and the narrative is going to be undertaken by a number of children who put their names forward following the presentation from the Minister and I that day at Schools Network Council. So that's a really positive way that they can feel engaged, and that little piece of film will be there, ad infinitum.
Excellent.
Thank you. I just had some questions about the children's short break service. You told us, I think last time, that there is a review, and I just wondered if you could provide us an update of the progress on the review.
So, children's short break service, there is a review, and unfortunately for the service, it's had many reviews, It is always a worry to me that we are doing the best we can with what we have available, but it's a service that, despite all those reviews, we know that there is certainly more work to be done. So we've looked at the analysis and recommendations. We've engaged with parents, carers, children, young people to ensure that recommendations accurately reflect the needs of children and young people. Feedback that we've had, sadly, is not not positive, and it does sort of sadden me that over half rated their experience as poor or very poor, and it is a service that we know we've got work to do. We have the two short break homes, Eden and Oakwell. There's a review underway there as part of the wider reform of our residential estate. So as part of that big residential review reform programme, those two houses will be receive work. Oakwell recently opened a new specialist equipped garden, and the other home recently was recently fully refurbished. There's a commitment to fully utilise bed capacity at each home and to offset sessional non-overnight short breaks, therefore increasing the number of families benefiting from the service. The review has made recommendations as to staffing established, management structure, rota principles required to fulfil our commitment. As I've said, it's sad that we are in a position where that part of the service is seen as poor. We are doing as much as we can as what we have. But I'm still.
You've said there about families saying over half saying it's poor or very poor. What exactly is it that families are telling you is not right with the service?
Do you want me to
I
step
know
in?
that, yes.
Yeah, I think the challenge that we have is there's not enough resource. So families want more, and it to be directed the way that they want it. Really seems to have been the review work that's the review that's happened to date. So there's been a lot of review work. I think what we haven't done historically is moved into that becoming a plan with proposals for action, and that's the work we're doing now. So rather than going back and spending a whole year doing a whole review, we're pulling together all of the analysis work that's happened over the last couple of years. There's been quite a lot of work. It's pulling that together, getting some more updated engagement.
Because I think you told
To
us
get
last
that done, I
time that
think-
you had a project lead for this.
We've got that, yeah. The project lead's been appointed.
Project lead appointed.
Only just, we got the agreement to put the funding in to support the post. We've recruited to it. That person started just the last weeks. But we've started the work already in the background without that person.
So
in
when are
place.
we likely to see the plan?
Well, we think the proposals should be we just put the project underneath my programme board so that it does get properly programme managed going forward. Proposals that analysis pulling together should be done by the end of February. And that will give us the opportunity then to set out the plan from there. That will set up the programme of what it will look like going forward. It'll probably take us time to implement because we're going to have to go out and look at the whole of commissioning of short breaks and all of the contracting arrangements across the system.
that probably doesn't give a lot of comfort to parents who are listening, who are absolutely desperate for short breaks.
Yeah.
And clearly you've missed the budget allocation for this year.
Yeah.
So realistically, when will parents start to feel a difference?
So I think the residential short breaks review will help us to look at that offer that's in there, because what we know is that we're not offering as much as we could within the resource we have available, and we need to reconfigure what we've got, and we could increase the offer without having to wait for more money for things like that.
I actually think that's the first time that you've acknowledged that to the panel. I don't think that was the message you gave us last time. I think the message we were getting last time was actually there's nothing to see here. So I think it's...
I think we have...
We did hear that.
I think we've said
maybe not
consistently
from
that
us,
we
we
know.
did hear that
Reviewing
there
it,
was
there's
no
a-
waiting list. That's what we've heard.
Oh, that's
I think in doing the review of the reviews, in effect.
Yes.
It brings it to the fore that we really
So I just
to-
appreciate your honesty.
Yeah, we have to be honest.
And so just to
And-
clarify though, so there's two bits there. I think we think there should be a broader offer. My view as the director is the short breaks offer in those homes is not as extensive. I think we could mobilise our resource better to offer more. We haven't got children waiting to come into that offer, interestingly. And what we don't understand is that because people haven't felt they could have it or they haven't been able to access it, so they've
They
stopped
haven't asked
asking.
for it.
We don't know.
Absolutely.
So we haven't got a list of people
Absolutely.
asking. We haven't got people coming. But we think we need to mobilise the offer better, and then we'll be able to stimulate if there is a need. We'll be able to stimulate better to get the offer out there. And then that helps us to then look about the broader short breaks offer. What should that look like?
Okay, thank you.
Does that make sense?
Yes.
I'd also just like to say, since this is a public recording, that we visited as a panel, visited both Oakwell and Eden, and have found what is available and what the work that they are doing is exceptional. And I'd just like to say that on behalf of the staff that work there.
Okay, thank you for that. So I think you've probably answered the question about how the feedback from families is being used. So it sounds like it is actually the foundation of what you're going to do moving forward. And you'll be addressing the need issue.
Yeah.
Okay. Just moving on from that, can you tell us how transition planning is being strengthened for children approaching adulthood, and what steps are being taken to ensure that there's that continuity of care and support beyond the age of 18?
So, for those approaching or coming up to the post-18 period, for many children, that actually starts at the age of 14, where all children and young people with additional needs are referred to adult services through the single point of referral. For children open to the complex need team, preparing for adulthood plans with development again at 14, and they are reviewed at a minimum every 6 months. I think we are doing some further work on this, but we've also got those with special education needs. So following a child's 17th birthday, adult services will undertake their own assessment of the need to ensure that appropriate packages of care are in place post-18. So these assessments include education and employment, health and well-being, social inclusion and social activities and independent living. So there are processes in place. I am aware that this is an area where people have concerns about that transition to 18. I don't know, again, Donna, I've certainly seen concerns from parents about.
It was one of the things that we picked up when we visited Oakwell, for example.
Yes.
And what we see is suddenly the child becomes an adult at 18 and effectively falls off a cliff. So whereas they were going to Oakwell...
Now, that shouldn't happen, but...
I think you've clearly articulated the policy and the process.
I know there's concern, so, it is
There's a working group, I think, that's been led by adult services that started to look at some of that. Because I think some of that's about different things like contracting. How do you get the transition from contracts from child's packages up into adults? So I think we've definitely got work to do there that will fit into that.
Because, you could say if you go into the transition process at 14, actually 4 years should be ample time to transition, and actually the day after somebody's 18th birthday shouldn't end them, isn't the time to do it.
Absolutely.
And also it isn't the time for them to actually be then into the family home, which has an impact on parents working, etc.
And I guess there's something there, isn't there, about system-wide for children's services, the quality and the strength of our care planning isn't yet where we want it to be. And as we get better at that, we'll plan earlier. It's across the whole system, planning early enough to get the strength about thinking what the long-term plan is. We're starting to get better at that. I think we're making much better thinking about actually when the child's older, how we're going to manage transition to adults. How do we line up with adults earlier and work together to try and think about, funding options change, care packages look different, you have to have different providers. We have to do that better, and I think that's why you need that working group to strengthen
and I think the difficulty is that myself and Malcolm indeed as well have been around this arena for very, very many years, and we hear the same processes and procedures, but actually nothing changes. And one of the questions that the panel had was whether you would consider actually putting in a dedicated transition team whose function was to do transition from children to adults, so that actually there were fewer gaps to fall through.
So I don't know the answer to that, if I'm honest with you, because I think that depends. I think the work of short breaks, our whole offer for children with additional needs and their care packages needs to be looked at in the round with all our contracting, our commissioning. And then I think you would want to be open about, is that the right plan or something like that, an option? I don't think, we haven't started to look at that, if I'm honest with you yet. And I think that wouldn't be something we'd say absolutely not to, because I think we have to look about what does it need. How would that work in a small service, and would you get enough capacity to make it work successfully. It's an economies of scale thing. But that's not to say I think that would be a wrong plan either at all. I think it's something that we need to look at the whole of that offer and the whole of that bit of the service and the whole of the care packages around that group of children to make the whole system
Does
work.
it become more challenging because children's services remain with SIPes as opposed to health and social services? Do you think that's been a barrier?
I think whatever system you work in, there are benefits and gain. I think losses aren't there. So you know what you might gain for moving into health and social care, you lose for children's education, the joining up of their day-to-day lived experience. Yeah. I think there's a bigger loss in some ways, but that's about how you work more effectively across the system. So a lot of our work is looking with like adult mental health, about our CAMS and our children's and adults' mental health interface, that one age mental health strategy, those things about how we join them up better, because the system should help. We should help us to do it rather than being a barrier, and that's about us, isn't it, making that happen rather than letting the systems get in the way.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
And I mean, it's another area where we do acknowledge that
there needs to be work.
We can do better.
Yeah.
And we acknowledge that, and we're looking to to do work on that, and children's services is a vast area. And sadly, there are some areas like this where it's been apparent for some time that there is a need to do more work in these areas, but we do we acknowledge that, and I think under particularly under Donna's leadership, we're starting to tackle those areas.
Yeah.
And I'm sure the panel feels that we're very grateful for your honesty, all of you, and I'm sure we will be revisiting this subject again.
Yeah.
Well, actually, I'm going to revisit it right
Right
now.
now.
Because I've still got
No time like the present.
I've still got something else I just wanted to ask about that or mention. So that also the Disability and Strategy Action Group are also been looking at this and getting people together from adult services as well to try and see what can be done. But what keeps coming up is families saying they just don't know who to speak to when it gets to that point. So even if there was a named officer,
Transition to.
if there was someone who they could speak to about this would help enormously.
Can I help with that? Because I think there's a lot of work going on in early help in that Children and Families Hub about strengthening the interface with how our department people understand what's going on and who to go to, how to get there. So there's a lot of work on website development and our services that are available, how people can start to access and see that. So that work is under the commissioning team, quite a lot of work going in there to try and create that to look. It'll be easier for you to find your way and navigate about how to get the help you need when you need it.
Okay, and that's through the family.
Through our Children and Families Hub, yeah, which would be right, because that will, obviously it's the front-facing door of everything, and if you have one way in to all of the services, you're much more likely to get signposted to the right way once we tidy all of that up.
But I guess the families we're talking about here are the ones that have social workers already.
So they should,
wouldn't need to actually start the process again, and this is the issue. These are families with social workers who do not know how to navigate
still
the
don't
system.
Social
so
workers
that should be the social worker
shouldn't
task.
be. No.
Doesn't
So-
seem to be.
So
working.
it's something we need to look at. Then we need to pick that up and see what's.
Yeah, I think we need to strengthen all of our work in that space, really. So,
I
part
can
of the-
recall. Yeah, I
meet
can
with
recall.
the Parent Carer Forum and all of that. It helps.
2 or 3 where people have sort of contacted me, and it is about this transition to adulthood. And so, perhaps it is something we just need to find out why there's the information isn't getting to people.
Yeah, they certainly seem to feel unsupported and not know where to go for help at that stage. Okay, so I'll just ask some questions now about putting children first and the family court system. Minister, could you outline how Jersey's Children's Services and the Family Court engage with expert organisations and survivors to ensure that children's voices are heard and that their rights are upheld throughout legal proceedings?
Right, so children's services are obviously that we're involved in issuing public law proceedings for children who require safeguarding, where a child is at risk or significant harm, and in involvement in those, children would. So you're looking at how they are in effect supported through
How they're supported and how they're listened to as well, how their rights are upheld.
Well, they have a guardian appointed in private law proceedings. Of course, they have Jersey Family Court Advisory Service, JAFCAS, who offer welfare and safeguarding. Where we are involved, obviously, we are supporting those children. In most cases, they will already have a social worker. They would have a guardian They would have a guardian who would also represent their views. They would have the independent advocates would also be involved. So I would hope that a combination of those ensures that they are supported through those proceedings.
Okay, so there is that support for children, but considering children's rights as well, we were looking at changes to the UK laws recently, significant reforms to the family court system in the UK to protect children from abusive parents.
Ah, right. Okay. So right. So yes, in the UK, they will be changing the law so that there is not a presumption of parental involvement in court proceedings, and I'm not obviously from a legal perspective. I don't know if Jersey law is identical to the UK. I certainly have concerns where there has been parental abuse, that in effect those parents can then appoint their own legal advisors and in effect go to court still seeking custody or challenging our request to take those children into care. That does occur. And that is a significant concern. I understand why the UK are changing that, and I think that as a result, Donna's already told me she's raising that at the next meeting of the Family Justice Court, Council. So we are about to actually raise that because we would want the same to apply here. I have had concerns long before this about that particular aspect.
Yeah. And I think particularly this is around children who have a parent who's been convicted of sexual offences or a child who's been conceived through rape as well. So there are moves to look at
absolutely, yes,
changes there.
We're aware of the change in the UK.
Yeah.
Could I just add, Minister, I suppose that's if it's relevant to, because our law here is very different. I think there is a question that presumption is even in our law like it is in the UK, right. So it might not be relevant to us to worry about, but we need to have it checked, so someone's looking at that.
But you certainly do have cases where, parents have appointed lawyers who in effect, the children have been subject to.
But I suppose the presumption law is assuming that child will be that the birth father or mother, whoever's the person that's violent or a risk, that there's assumption that they should have contact regardless of whether or not it's in the child, regardless of whether it's right, but because it's a presumption. Whereas I think our law here probably doesn't carry the same as presumption, but we need to have that checked out by the Family Justice Council.
Yeah.
Look into that and
Yeah,
check
we will.
up on it.
Yeah.
Yes.
And just, you know, on a smaller level, but just when the child has parental contacts that's supposed to happen, what happens if the child does not want that parental contact?
So,
Are their rights respected to refuse that?
do you want me to pick that,
Their
Minister? Because
rights
that wouldn't
would
be something that
respected
you.
if they didn't
I mean,
wish
that-
to have contact. Yeah.
Yes, I suppose this is about private family law mostly, which often children's services won't be involved in unless it's something really contentious or there's a requirement around assessment, etc. So the judge should deal with that as part of those family law proceedings. They should determine about risk and about the child's interest, and they should take the child's wishes and feelings into account in determining whether or not they feel that contact should be pursued. So that should be the judge. That's the judge's main job, really, and they'll have a JAFCAS guardian who will be obviously the person that's supposed to take the child's wishes and feelings and make sure that's weighed up in the proceedings.
And outside of the court system, if a child, say in foster care, is adamant they do not want to see a parent, is that respected? I can't remember.
So that would be in a similar way, in an operational practice way. You would have every child you would look at. There is always in law that children have a right to have, I suppose, their connections with their family and their birth family always, and you have to weigh that up. So if we were to feel that if a child was saying to us they didn't want to see a parent, depending on their age, you would obviously place more or less weight with how that is responded to. That would be part of your assessment. If it was in care proceedings, you would expect the court to make a determination on that. So sometimes, because a child doesn't want that and it's not right for them, the court will determine there's no contact. So it's so individual. It would be very difficult to really give you a really blunt answer to
Yeah,
it.
I
It's
suppose
so
we just-
individualised.
No, that's understandable. We're just trying to understand how much the children's rights are.
We'd
paramount,
always-
or-
They are always paramount, but you have to weigh that up. And if it's something very contentious, then that would be something that's often determined by court of law outside of the department's ability. Because if it was something that you really couldn't make a decision on, then that may be something that ends up in a court arena for a judge to decide on.
Okay.
But generally, you would always we should have whole children at the heart of everything we do and what they feel and they want.
Yeah. Have there been any serious case reviews, Minister, during your term of office?
Is that in this year?
Well, in the term
Last
of
2
office.
years.
so
2
last-
years.
2
last
years.
2 years.
18 months.
Because they
I
have
don't
been
think-
published in the past.
I don't think there has
I
been a
don't
serious
think
case
not
review in
serious
the
case
last 2
review,
years.
So
No.
if there were, they get published.
They would
Not
publish,
all-
but I don't think they have
not
been. I know
always.
there are.
Not
There are.
always.
No.
No.
No?
Not
There's not an
always.
assumption of
Always published,
publication. Publication is always based on whether it is appropriate and
Yeah.
safe to do so. Because if there's a child may be exposed because of the nature of a small island. People might know the family. There may be a risk around publication that could expose somebody to risk of harm. So that would always be weighed up.
Okay, but there haven't been any anyway
No,
during
no.
your term of
We would want
office.
to publish
The
if we
numbers have
could,
gone
and it's
down,
safe.
haven't they,
Okay.
Yeah.
over the years? Yeah.
We were published. So
it's
an
safe and good-
example in the past, we've published the learning.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's all.
always.
And that hasn't happened in my
In the
2 years.
last, no.
And
Which
you'd
is
always,
a good thing.
yeah, you'd
Yeah,
always
yeah.
explore if you can publish. The presumption would be you want to. But then it would be about is it safe and appropriate.
Absolutely safe.
Okay, and one last question, I think, because we're finishing quite early. We have just published our online harms review, and we just want to know if you will be able to respond as quickly as possible.
I hope so. Now, I'm going to be honest, I haven't finished going all the way through it yet. But as soon as we are able to, we will respond. I'm sure you'll want us to do that as quickly as possible. There's a lot to think about within that report. So, if you could give us a little time, but I am very pleased, that you've done that, and let's see what it, I know there are various recommendations that concern me. Obviously we need to consider the sort of implications. I think that particularly there is one, is it recommendation number 5 that I'm the lead?
Yeah.
I personally don't, right. Personally, I don't have a problem with that.
Yeah.
But if that's going to be the case, then I would want to be assured that I get the support and that I have the right, in effect, level of authority. Because at the moment, the law is in one. The consideration of a new law is in one area.
Yeah.
There are other bits that are in Justice and Home Affairs. Yes, I'm the Assistant Minister, but not necessarily au fait with that. There are bits in Children's Services, and if somebody's going to take the lead, then they've got to be able to say, this is the way I want to have it done, irrespective of which department that particular subject falls. And that I have to have discussions with the Chief Minister about that, and I haven't managed to do that yet.
No, that would be good. And I think all the findings and recommendations are intended to be helpful.
Yeah.
So yes, it would be something that we're just hoping that gets on track as soon
So
as
as I say,
possible.
I'm supportive of that idea, but it would have to change from the way it is today. That different ministers have got different responsibilities. It has to be brought into one. If we're going to have somebody who's overall in charge, then they need to know that what they want or what their officers want is what's going to be carried through.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, unless there's any other questions or anything else to say, that's it. We've got to the end of our hearing.
Thank you.
Well, thank you very much.
Okay.
Good.
So thank you very much for that. It's been really interesting.
Thanks.
Yeah.